Okay, it's springtime, so we are throwing streamers. This is going to be the Rich Strolis Bloody Baitfish. That is one of my top streamers. When it comes to streamers, I don't really have, a ton of flies that I fish pretty consistently. It's really just whittled down to a few. I'm a big fan of the Sex Dungeon by Kelly Gala. Big fan of this pattern. So I don't really have a ton of streamers in my box. I don't use that many different ones, but this is definitely one of the ones that I use. It's weighted, gets you down quite a bit, great movement in the water, and really easy to tie. So that should be a huge plus. So in the vise is a gamakatsu B10S stinger hook. That is a size 4. You can switch that up however you'd like. And this is my top streamer thread 6/0 Semper Fly Nano Silk. This is absolute rock solid stuff. Really, really hard to break. You can really tension down with this stuff. You can use it to tow things with your car, all kinds of stuff. If you break this thread, I don't know what you are doing at the vise. So we'll get that started. We'll double back. We'll leave a little bit of space behind the eye. You don't really need too much. And the eyes for this fly are going to be these pseudo eyes. I think this is a size medium with the green pupil there. I also tie them with the red. That was the fly that I showed at the beginning. Like that, I do that in the red. I actually kind of like the red a little bit better, but I want to try a couple of the green ones, so this video is going to have green. So we're going to get a few wraps on just to get it on the hook, on the underside of it. And we're just going to start making some tight figure 8 wraps here, try to get that locked in as best we can. These eyes are definitely going to want to move around on you, so you want to get some good tight figure 8 wraps. Also might want to loop down underneath. Just keep your thread under the hook shank. Make some turns, get it locked in there. A couple more turns over the top. Just try to get that locked in as best you can. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, I've mentioned several times I'm not the biggest glue guy, but this is definitely an area where I do use glue. I like this liquid fusion stuff. I don't quite remember where I got it from, but I'm sure it's readily available pretty much anywhere. And a little bit of it shoot out there. I want to rub that off on some paper. And we'll get some glue on there. I'm just going to let that sit during the tying process. That'll kind of help keep those eyes from moving around. Okay, so first order of business here is we move our thread a little bit towards the back. We need a plume of some white marabou. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of stroke that back. You don't really need this that long. This is just going to kind of be underneath. So about a hook shank in length or so. We'll move that there, get it cinched down nice and tight. Now I'm going to tie this onto a bare shank, so I'm really going to pull. This is one of the benefits of this 6/0 nano silk. I mean, I am really cranking down on this thread right now, putting a lot of pressure. That's going to lock that in there without spinning around the hook. If you don't put a lot of pressure on a bare hook shank, because I don't put a thread underbody on this fly. I mean, you could, but I don't really need to with the type of thread I'm using. It'll tend to spin on you. So if you can really crank down on it, that'll be a good thing. I'm getting my marabou caught up a little bit here. Get that out of there. And snip that off. Okay, so while our thread is at the back of the hook, we're going to tie in a couple of materials here. The first thing I'm going to tie in is just a basic standard white rabbit zonker. And I'm just going to bring that out to the front, and I'm going to put my thumb right there where I want to tie that in. And I'm going to pull some of these fibers forward to kind of expose a tie-in point. So they're both going in the opposite direction there. And right there where I want to tie that in, I'm just going to lower that onto the hook and squeeze. If you want, you can wet your fingers a little bit and just kind of pull those fibers forward, get them out of the way. Let's get a loose wrap and then really tighten down. really, really tight wraps, because that's really the only tie-in point on the back, so I like that to be nice and strong. Okay, again, while our thread is in the back, the next thing that I'm going to tie in is a piece of this red medium-size ultra wire. And you should have some of this laying around, because if you don't have some of this laying around, that means you are not tying red copper johns. And if you're not tying red copper johns, you got to ask yourself, what are you even doing? So you should have some red wire laying around, because nobody that fly fishes or ties is going to not tie and fish a red copper john. Okay, so the actual pattern for the body part anyway, at this stage calls for some pearl diamond braid. And I do use that. It's great material for the body, but for this, I actually kind of like this small size pearl polar chenille a little bit better. So that's kind of what I've been using lately. So I'm going to take a little bit of that, tie that in. But again, if you don't have the chenille, the diamond braid is what it actually calls for. Similar effects, so you don't gain or lose anything. I just happen to like the chenille a little bit better. Get that tied in nice and tight, and I'm going to bring my thread pretty close to behind the eye and start wrapping that chenille. Just tight wraps all the way up the body. There's really no part of this fly that requires any sort of advanced technique or anything like that. No matter what level of tyer you are, whether you're an expert, beginner, whatever, this is a really great streamer that you can tie pretty easily. Load your box right up with them. All right, so I'll get some wraps kind of secure in that. And we'll get that snipped out of there. Okay. Next order of business, we are going to take the wire, and I'm going to wrap that a couple of times around where I tied in my zonker. Get a couple of wraps right there. And then I'm going to start bringing this up the body with evenly spaced wraps. Just rib that all the way up to where your thread currently sits. And finish that off. I mean, we're already pretty close to the end of this fly. I mean, as I said in the beginning, this is not a difficult fly to tie. I know I'm blocking the camera right now, but it ended up facing me, so I'm just helicoptering that off. Okay, so for the final step, what we're going to do is we're going to flip this upside down, and we're going to work on the underside of this a little bit. And what we're going to use for the underside, I'm going to start out with some of this ice dub in pearl. And I'm going to pull out not a ton of it. I don't really have any way to verbalize how much I'm actually using here. I'll just show it to you. Probably about that much or so. And you can see how it's kind of all over the place. So I'm going to grab the farthest pieces and pull them out. And then put them back in my pile. And just keep doing that again and again, 3, 4, 5 times. To kind of even those out as much as you possibly can. You're never going to get them perfect. They're going to be all over the place, and you kind of want that, but you want them somewhat even. So I'm going to take the middle of that dubbing, place it flat on the underside of my fly, and I'm going to take 1, 2, 3 wraps, lock it in like that, and then take the part that's leaning to the front, fold it back, and take a few more wraps in front of it to kind of tease that material towards the back. And that's all we're really going to do to kind of finish this out. Next material is some red ice dub or some trilobal dub, whatever you feel like you have. You can probably even use some laser dub if you want, but same thing. We're going to pull these fibers apart, try to align them the best we can. I'm going to lay them flat in front of my pearl ice dub. 1, 2, 3 good tight wraps. Fold it all back. And 3 more. And That's good there. We'll go through, let's do one more step of that with one more clump of ice dub. Same thing, we'll lay that down flat. Get that tied in. Fold it back. A couple more in front. And we'll flip our fly over. Now we're just going to pull this zonker down. I'm going to pull a few fibers away from the tie-off point. We'll get that right down in the head there. Get a good tight wrap. A couple wraps behind it. Get the excess out of there. We'll clean up the head a little bit. And that is pretty much it. That is a very, very simple fly to tie, super effective. One of my top streamers. You can switch up the colors. I use a gray zonker every once in a while. But that is that. Oh yeah, one more step. Let's run our fingers. Let's snip something off there. Got some crap here crowding up the head. All right, so last thing we're going to do, I'm just going to kind of stroke all this back. I'm going to run my fingers along the fly, and if you look on the bottom here, you can see where we tied in that marabou, and right when my fingers clear that marabou, right there, I'm going to take my scissors. Now, the tail is not going to end up the length of the marabou, because if you look at this part up here, see how long those fibers are? So my tail is going to extend past the marabou by about that length. So once my fingers clear that marabou, I'm just going to take my scissors and just slip them in there and just cut off just the leather part of the zonker. That's it. There's that. Let me move my camera to the left a little bit so you can kind of see the whole thing. And I want to shore up that head a little bit with a little bit of resin. You know, when I tie trout flies, I've got, nymphs, dries, caddis, mayflies, everything you could ever possibly imagine. Streamers, I really keep it simple. Sex Dungeon, this pattern, a couple others here and there, nothing too crazy. But this one you can crank out quite a few. You can really, really do quite a few of these. Another cool little variation of this is I also tie a mini version. Now the mini version is pretty much the same exact thing. You just have to size down your materials. And I think one of the coolest materials for that are some of these micro mink zonkers. So you can tie the same exact thing, same exact way, same exact hook, except a size 10 instead of a size 4. Smaller eyes, obviously, smaller thread, but it's tied the exact same way. Substitute in that mink instead of the rabbit, and you've got yourself a nice little substitute there and a miniature version of that, which is pretty cool. So that is that. That is the bloody baitfish. Really, really, really easy fly to tie. There's not a lot to it. So grab the materials and you can crank out quite a few of those. It's got great action in the water. It's got weight to get you down. Great pattern. So any questions or anything, as always, leave them in the comments and I'll get right back to you.